Hello everybody and welcome back to another Path of Exile 1 video. Today we're going to be doing a build update for the Harbinger of Doom League starter in the Phrecia 2 event. A lot of you guys are playing this build more so than I expected, so I want to start off with an apology for not posting this update sooner. It was a pretty busy weekend for me and I thought I'd take this event a little bit more chill than I typically do with league starts. With that said, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. We're going to start with a recap of the campaign, so if you guys don't care about that and just want to skip ahead to the gear upgrades, then go ahead and fast forward the video to the timestamp on the screen. So, Phrecia 2, Electric Boogaloo. Coming in, I had no idea just how hard the campaign would be. Turns out GGG threw a couple of curveballs our way. We have unique monsters and raging on low life, and we also have to deal with that whole Maven invitation battle before each of the act boss. Now, thankfully the build had enough damage and survivability to breeze through the campaign. I'd say that everything went smoothly. Act 10 is where my damage started to fall off, and this was a quick fix by putting on the Foulborn Dweedri's Scorn helmet. As one of you guys mentioned, the unique is actually super cheap right now, so if you're still in the campaign or just getting started, consider spending your first chaos or two and getting that helmet. Alright, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. We managed to finish the campaign in about 8 hours, and we managed to do it deathless, which is actually pretty cool. But then we got into maps, and this is where things started to get a bit tricky. Right, some of you guys were super ahead of me, and you told me in the comments that the power charge stacking uniques were way too expensive. So that was the Void Battery and Ralakesh Impatience in particular. I think these were several divines in the first few days, so that was completely out of our budget. So I think we're all pretty much in the same boat. We're kind of priced out of the upgrades that we need. That means it's time to pivot. So what did I end up doing? Well, I started transitioning from hit crit into poison ailment. Okay, now this wasn't easy to do. There was a lot of passives we needed to refund, and we also needed to change the affix priority on our gear. I'd say that the biggest change was moving away from spell damage. This only applies to hits. It does not apply to ailments, and poison is an ailment. So we want to move away from spell damage and get chaos damage instead. The other issue we were having is that survivability was also starting to become an issue. Right, the character isn't tanky. When I made this, I didn't really know about the extra difficulty from the event. So we have monsters and raging, we have risk scarab modifiers being thrown onto our maps. All of these things are combining to make our life a little bit difficult. So at around this point in the build, I thought that we'd have a little bit more passive points to spend on damage, but we ended up spending that on survivability and layered defenses instead. Alright, that brings us to the meat and potatoes of this video. Here is the character. We are level 90 and we've got a whole bunch of upgrades to talk about. We're going to start with the wand. Now, the wand we are using is a profane wand with the implicit cast speed modifier. The only affix that matters on this wand is the increased chaos damage, which is a prefix modifier, I believe, and once you have a wand like this, you can slap on a cast speed suffix using the crafting bench, and you should be good to go for quite some time. The next thing we want is to get a little bit more tanky, so I bought myself an armor evasion chestplate. I'd say you'd want around 1,000 armor and evasion on it, and you want to make sure to grab some resistances as well. Right? It's very important to not get life modifiers on this, so no maximum life, increased life, life regeneration, or life regeneration rate. You don't want any of those modifiers on this because we're going to be using the life mastery that gives us more hit points when our chest has no life modifiers. Alright, from here we're going to use the rest of our rares to get our attributes, so that's your strength and dexterity to use your gems. We also want to get more resistances, mana, and life. Alright, keep in mind that mana is a really big component of this build. You need it to cast your spells, and since we have mind over matter, we also have it as a defensive layer. Alright, the only other thing worth mentioning here is that prioritize movement speed on your boots above all else, because mobility is unironically a defensive layer for this build, as you're going to see later on in the video. Right, the next most important thing we need is to get chance to poison on hit with spells. We're currently sitting at 85% chance to poison on the build. Most of this is coming from our cluster jewel setup. We're using one large cluster jewel and two medium cluster jewels with the septic spell notable. Alright, these two things combined give us a 40% chance to poison, and we get another 45% from our tree. Right, what this means is we need to get another 15% to get that poison hit cap. There's a couple of ways we can do this. You can get chance to poison on hit on jewels, you can get it through a tattoo, or you can get it as an affix on your weapon. I'd have to look up and see which one that is. It could be Hunter Influence, I'm not sure. We'll find that out when we make that upgrade. Now, if you do go the tattoo route, keep in mind that the tattoos are super expensive right now. I think they're almost a divine each, so going from 85% chance to poison to 100% is going to cost you a lot of currency. Alright, the other thing I want to stress is the cluster jewel. Make sure that your large cluster jewel has 8 passives on it, okay? You do not want any more passives on it. That is going to make it very point inefficient, alright? The less passives you have on it, the less points you have to spend to get your cluster jewel setup working. So, large cluster jewel, 8 passive points, okay? Alright, we have a similar idea for the medium cluster jewels. You can use either the 4 passive medium jewel or the 5 passive medium jewel, okay? They're basically identical to one another. Do not use the 6 passive medium jewel. That is going to cost you more points, and those points are better off spent elsewhere. The last upgrade we made to our gear was swapping into Leper's Alms. Now, this is a unique shield that gives us a little bit of life, a little bit of evasion, and more importantly, increased ailment duration. This is going to increase the damage we deal from our poison because the poisons stack infinitely but have a finite duration. So if you double the duration of your poison, the total amount of damage you deal with your poison is doubled as well. Right, the only other expensive thing worth mentioning now is that we are using the Skittering Runes Anoint. Previously I said to path down here with your passive tree, but because we swapped into poison ailment early, we need those points to get our chance to poison with our cluster jewel, okay? So you are going to put this notable onto your Anoint. This is going to cost you 2 silver oils and 1 opalescent oil, which is really expensive right now, so make sure you're happy with your amulet before you decide to anoint it, because the Anoint unironically costs more than the rest of the build right now. Right, now we're going to swap over to live footage so I can walk you guys through some of the stuff that's easier to show in person. So that is going to be our gem setup, our Grafts, and also our Flasks. So let's start with the gems. A lot of this stuff shouldn't be new to you. We've talked about it in the League Start video. It's going to be very close, if not the same. So we have Grace connected to Eternal Blessing support. That lets us reserve our 50% aura for no reservation, okay? The catch there is we cannot reserve anything else on our mana, so we need to use Arrogance support with Clarity and reserve that on our life. I have it turned off for now, but when I turn it on, you can see here that a fraction of our life is always reserved. Next up, we have Frostblink on its own. It doesn't need any support gems, so just put it whenever you have an open blue socket. And then let's talk about the more important gem. So that's going to be your Despair Self-Cast in your Dweedri's Scorn. So here we have Despair, Spell Cascade, Unbound Ailments, because we are now playing the poison version of the build. We also have Avoid Manipulation for basically that same reason, okay? Previously, you might have been using Cursed Ground or Controlled Destruction. Okay, that's going to be spell damage. We don't want spell damage, we want chaos damage. Okay, so there is your Foulborn Dweedri's Scorn gem setup. Right, next we can talk about Vixen's Entrapment. So here, the socket order of the gems matter. This is where we put all of our curses that we want to trigger. So we should be sitting at a maximum 3 curse limit. So we need 4 curses in our build to override it and trigger Doom Blast from Impending Doom, okay? So put the curse that you don't want on your build in the first socket. In this case, we're using Enfeeble, right? Then you can put all your other curses that you're using. So in this case, we have Temporal Chains. It's going to slow enemies down and make it so that your poisons last longer on the enemies. So that's a damage upgrade. We want that. And then we also want Punishment. This is going to make them take increased damage while they are on low life. And if they hit you, they're going to get debilitated and they're going to deal less damage on the following hit. Okay? So Punishment, Temporal Chains, and Despair are the three active curses we want on the enemies. Okay, so put that Enfeeble as the first socket there, and then put all your other curses, and then you can toss in Spell Cascade. It doesn't matter where this one goes. Okay, and the reason we need Spell Cascade here is because we use Spell Cascade on the Doitri Scorn. If you ever upgrade to the Awakened version, you actually need 2 Awakened versions of the gem, one for your hat, one for your gloves, for the build to work. So things can get super expensive as you keep upgrading this build. Right, what else is up with gems? We have our Spell Totem setup that has evolved from Blight into Wither. So we have Spell Totem connected to Wither. Wither is going to put a debuff on the enemy that slows them down and increases the chaos damage they take. To make Wither stack faster, we are going to be using multiple totems. So when you cast once, you get 2 totems. Alright, if you cast again, you'll have 3 totems up, casting Wither on nearby enemies. And to make things a little bit safer for the totems, we want to use Infused Channeling, so that makes them take less damage from hits, I believe. And if that doesn't work, you can always put Faster Casting instead, so that they stack faster. Okay, so there is our totem for Link. Right, the next most important thing is our cast when damage taken support. Now I've added another gem to this. We have cast when damage taken support, Steel Skin, Sigil of Power, and new to the build is Phase Run. So what happens with Phase Run is that when it procs, it's going to give you phasing, it's going to give you stealth, and it's going to give you increased movement speed. Now these 3 things combined is going to make you less likely to get targeted, and it's going to give you the ability to move through enemies and get out of a shitty situation. Right, so that should be all of the gems. Next, let's talk about Grafts, because these are actually super helpful in progressing your build. Right now, our survivability is a little bit crap, so we're using Molten Zoth Graft, which gives us the Heart of Flame Graft ability. Okay, when you are missing life, this graft is going to put on a barrier, and that barrier is going to take damage before your life. Okay, so while this is active, and Steel Skin is active, and Sigil of Power is on the ground, you can actually take quite a few hits before your character dies. Remember, the goal here isn't to be tanky, the goal here is to survive a couple hits, reposition, and kill whatever is trying to kill you. This is not yet a tanky build. Right, the other graft we have picked is the Stoking Zoth Graft. So this one is going to give you the Grey Wind Howls Graft ability. This is going to give us a little bit of a conditional ailment immunity. Anytime your character has ailments, this thing is going to proc, it's going to remove those ailments, and it's going to give you some kind of buff that gives you extra damage. But that's not really helping our build because we deal chaos damage. Okay, so this is just cleansing ailments, really good for getting rid of ignites, getting rid of shocks, and if you want a more reliable source of getting rid of freeze, I recommend using that on your flask, okay? So I guess that's a good segue into flasks. We have immunity to chill on our life flask, then we have an instant life flask with immunity to shock. We have a silver flask that gives us movement speed and onslaught, and then we have a quicksilver flask that gives us movement speed. And for the mana flask, I'm still trying to figure out if instant application is necessary on this build. It might not be. Maybe you just want a nice, long-lasting mana flask. All right, I haven't put any enchantments onto my flasks yet, so if you have more money than me, make sure to use Instilling Orb on the silver and the quicksilver flask and get it to auto-activate. That's going to be less buttons for you to press. If you want to improve your Pantheon, you can get Freeze Avoidance here. You can also get Reduced Chill Effect. We're still using Brine King for that stun mitigation, and we are still using Soul of Ralakesh because it makes it so we don't have to worry about bleeding. Alright, bleeding does more damage to your character while you are moving, so mitigating that with this minor Pantheon makes it so we don't have to worry about it. I think there's one more thing I want to talk to you guys about, and that's going to be the Cluster Jewel setup on the passive tree. So for your large Cluster Jewel, the important thing here is that you have 8 passive skills. This is non-negotiable, guys. It has to be 8. If it's higher, you will be wasting more of your passive points to get to the jewel sockets over here. Okay, so the less passives in this cluster, the more point efficient it is. So 8 passive large cluster jewel for increased chaos damage, and you want to get 3 of the notables on it. So in this case, I have Wicked Pale. This is going to give us increased chaos damage. Then we have Dark Ideation. Since we have a little bit of mana stacking, you're going to get an increased percentage to chaos damage per mana you have. I'll have to calculate exactly how much that is and if this is worth using over something else. But that's what we have for now. Then we have Unholy Grace. This thing is crack cocaine. It's going to give you chaos damage, attack speed, and cast speed. It feels really good to have. Highly recommend getting this one. Alright, and then once you have your large cluster filled out, this is where we put our medium cluster jewels for septic spells. Okay, once again, we have gone El Cheapo on these jewels. They're not very good. We can min-max them later. So I think you can get 2 notables in a medium cluster jewel. We only have 1. That is the most affordable way to go. So septic spells, it's going to give you cast speed, some damage over time multiplier, and it's going to give you poison on hit with spell damage. Okay, so like I said earlier, 20% here, 20% there. Then we have 10% here, 15% there. So we have a total of 65% so far. And then we're getting Curse Mastery, which is giving us another 20% conditional on the enemy being cursed. The last 15% we're going to get through with tattoos. So maybe you can use the int nodes over here. I'll just walk over to Faustus and we can figure out how much that tattoo costs. So I think I type poison here, tattoo of the Tahoa Shaman. Alright, this currently costs 100 chaos. I think that's almost a divine. So we need 3 of these to get poison cap on our build. So we're going to have to save up for that and do that as soon as possible. Alright, so I think that's it. This is the character so far. I'll show you guys my Atlas progression super quick. We have 77 of the 115 maps complete. So that's all your white and yellow maps and some uniques, okay? We're about to get into red map progression. And of the few red maps that I tried to do when I was collecting footage for this video, the random modifiers that the event is adding can be a little bit annoying. Sometimes you end up with less curse effectiveness or reduced cooldown recovery rate. That one really hurts your single target damage. So if you can avoid running map modifiers with reduced cooldown recovery rate, please try and do so, otherwise your build is going to do no damage. With that said, I think that brings us to the end of this video. That's all of the updates I have to share. So there's still a lot of stuff we need to do. We need to get that last 15% chance to poison. We've got to invest into layering our defenses. Now, like I said at the start of this video, I am taking it a little bit easy with this event. So the progression's going to be a little bit slow. If you guys are looking for a more endgame version, make sure to check out the videos I linked before. Right, that's going to be in the description. Right, that's the Poison Occultist or the Ignite Elementalist versions from the regular Ascendancies. Okay, we're just going to have to get a little creative on transferring that over to the Harbinger. And that brings us to the end of this video. Make sure to like it if you found it useful. If you have any questions, leave it down in the comments. I try to answer them regularly. And if you want to see more Path of Exile content, then consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help me out. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon with a new video. Bye!